Good morning.
Good morning.
Packed house today.
Stay in the room on.
Damn, that room only boy. I'm lucky to get a seat today. Good morning. Good morning. All right, so we're in lesson 8, moving along, overcoming a crisis. Right? We started that on Wednesday. All right. So, what was the crisis that we were discussing? Y'all remember? We were in John 4. All right. So there was a nobleman who traveled. Said his son was sick, and Capernaum. Capernaum. And so, excuse me,
Hurry.
Capernaum. There you go. There you go. I knew I was saying it wrong. Capernaum. And so, he had come. He saw Jesus. Said, "My son's sick." He asked Jesus to come back with him to Capernaum, and heal his son because he knew he could heal him. Okay. So, let's evaluate that. Y'all come on in. All right. So, overcoming a crisis. So his son was sick, I guess, on his deathbed and whatnot. So he felt that was a crisis, right? So in the time of crisis, what did he do? Went to Jesus. All right. Now the distance from Capernaum, Galilee, is 25 miles. All right, 25 miles. So that's like, how far is it to Americas? Where Martin at? Martin, how far is it to Americas from here? Miles.
About 30.
About 30. All right. So little bit further than going to Americas, right? If you had to go to, how far is the Civic Center? About 10, 12, 11, let's say 11 miles, in between 10 and 12. So it's, you walk there and back, you still ain't going 25 miles, right? So now in these days, they didn't have vehicles, right? They didn't have motorcycles and scooters and stuff. They had no roller skates. So this gentleman walked, more than likely, right? And they said it was a full day's walk, a full day's walk. So this gentleman was in a crisis. His son was sick. He felt that Jesus could help. Went to Jesus and said, "It's worth me walking all day to go see him." And when he got there, he asked Jesus to come walk. Asked Jesus, had the nerve to ask Jesus to walk back 25 miles. Now, it's one thing to ask me to help you. It's one thing to tell you, "Hey, but you got to come all the way back to my house to help me." You know. So, but what do you think it took in him to do that?
Hey.
Faith. Exactly. Faith. He had the faith. You know, some people say, "I'm not walking way over there for nothing," and he probably ain't gonna come back or whatever.
He really believed
He he,
something was
he
gonna
really
happen.
be. Probably got up early that morning and went walking. You know, um, you know, what's a how long is a marathon? 26 miles, 26.2 miles, something like that. Now, you see them on TV, whatever. Some people do it in about 2 hours and something, I guess. Those those, those professional runners. Now, if I did it, probably about 2, 3 days before I could make it. Well, exactly. I probably fall over before I got to the finish line. But you know, but just walking, it's about a day's walking. You're not talking on some nice level surface. They're walking through, the terrain, through desert and whatnot. They probably had some paths worn out, of course, that I guess that people travel back and forth on, but but it probably wasn't an easy walk. Um, but this gentleman had to have a lot of faith. Let's turn to Hebrews, if you will, chapter 4. Someone, please.
Amen.
Yes,
I know I said I want to talk.
James Hall told me a story, y'all. But y'all go ahead and turn to Hebrews 4 while he's speaking.
People show that same faith, but they don't show that same faith toward God because people will get up. Just say Walmart is gonna have, we used to say Black Friday. People will get up, go get in line, you know, because Walmart having Black Friday, I can get this TV dirt cheap. So they believe you. They put their trust in, be getting up early, getting in line. But when it comes to the Lord, it's a different story.
Mm.
Because the Lord, say, look to me with everything. But they don't do that. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but like I said, in this case, this fellow had never met it. All he knew was what he had heard and maybe some things he may have seen.
Hmm.
But in his mind, like I said, I'm gonna go where he at. If I go, I'm getting something.
Yeah. What did you hear? So at this time, I believe Jesus had, begun his ministry, of course, but this probably isn't too long after he had turned the water into wine at their wedding. And so he had performed that miracle, but I think that may have been the only one he had performed at the time. So I guess from what he had heard people say, the gentleman may have been at the wedding, I don't know. But from what he saw or from what he heard people say, he knew Christ could help him. All right, so let's read someone got Hebrews 4, 14 through 16. Got a hand over here. Got a hand over here too.
Since then, we have a great high priest who passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. Let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has tempted in all things as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore draw near with confidence to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and may find grace to help in time of need.
Okay, all right. So it tells us there we don't have a high priest that cannot sympathize with us. I mean, he can sympathize with us. He knows what we're going through. Yes, sir.
I want to go back to the notebook just for a second.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're gonna stay on. We're gonna stay on for a little bit. Go ahead.
Okay, mentioned the distance that he traveled.
Hmm.
I think a point that we shouldn't overlook is, and this goes back to like worrying. I think we was talking about worry and all that stuff on Wednesday.
Hmm.
But I feel with him, he got to a place where I don't have no choice but to go and seek after, something different. I done did all I could do. So I feel like he humbled himself first.
Yeah.
Before he went and sought out. And I don't want to say that I'm not telling anybody to pray to God, to rely, not to rely on God. But God actually wants us to do all that we can do first, on our own before we go and just, hey, I need you to handle this now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel by us doing that, it'll help us build ourselves. We'll grow in faith by doing those things. Because anybody ever prayed for something, it never came about. I think we do a lot, and has happened to us a lot. And I think it goes back to God have already given us the ability to do certain things, but we don't want to do nothing for it. So why should we act them?
That's true. We got to get up. We got to get up and move, don't
we? You got to.
we? Yeah. Yeah.
So First Peter talks about, I think it's Peter, talks about, we know this, cast all our cares on him, our burdens, so forth, so on. And it means just to, once you get to your wits end, give to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even when we talk about worrying, is it that is it with that guy, do you think he was worried? Or was it more of just a concern? Because I think James was mentioning, him and his, ordeal some time back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he just gave it up, right? Put it in God's hand. He didn't worry about it. I think we get the thing of praying as well. Okay, I'm praying to God, and I'm letting Him have it. Can we actually say that that issue, situation, or whatever isn't on our mind or crosses our mind? So when can we say that we worry?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it stuff stay on my mind all the time,
Yeah. It
24/7.
does. Lose sleep a little bit, don't you?
Exactly. Am I worried about it?
But you know Jesus is gonna fix it. But you still, it's still on your mind. Still on your mind. I get,
So
I get, and you mentioned what the nobleman was going through. He probably, if his son's been sick, he probably was taking him um to all the doctors, all the medicine, the medicine men or whatever they were, in those days. The and probably every expert that had been around, that he could get to try to get his son healed. And so he like I said, he got to the point where he knew it was Jesus that could do it. He was willing to walk. Okay, so I saw you about to say something in Dirk too. So go
I
ahead.
think there's a point where being concerned, worried, and being concerned, there's a point where it meets. Like with this official, I think he was worried up until the point that he got to Jesus, and Jesus told him, "Hey, this is going to happen." And I think that's the same thing with us, because at the point that we're worried, we are still attempting to handle it ourselves. And the point is where you stop worrying is when you just let go. Because hey, I done what I can do. It's beyond what I can do. I done prayed about it. Whatever it is, it's gonna be. I think that's kind of the same thing. There's a point where you're worried, and then there's a point where you just let go of the belief. And I think that's kind of the wrestling match that everybody had. The point that you're worrying, you still got a hold to. You still got the corner of that thing trying to figure out if there's an angle that you can work this and something you can do with that. The point you stop is when the point you truly believe that, hey, it's going to be what it's going to be. I done prayed, let go.
Hmm.
Well, the case, just like it says, nobleman, what he did, he was searching. Um, that saying that they say, you turn every stone. So he did everything that he could do in the meantime before he went to go search for Jesus, because everything that he did as a man of the flesh, it wasn't working. So hearing about all that Jesus did, he knew in confidence, and that was the spirit leading him there. It had nothing to do with journey or anything. It was he had to get there because he was in search for something. So whatever was explored, he explored that man could do. So that's why he relied on Christ to search him out.
Yeah. All right. You ever have something kind of on your mind or whatever, something that you need to do. You're not sure how you're gonna do it. When you do it this way, I do that. You kind of exploring options in your mind. And some you hear somebody say something like, "Well, let me sleep on it a little bit." Think about it, whatever. And it's like it comes to you. You know what? Maybe I ought to try doing it this way. And then maybe do a little bit. Okay, yeah, okay. I think that's the best way to go with this. To me, it's like I feel like God is guiding me, in my decision. He's guiding me towards, if I'm doing a little research, I'm Googling it, trying to see how I should do this, whatever. It's like God is guiding me, to that. Maybe a person I run into or something, and they say, they may bring it up. And I say, you know what? I had that same situation. What did you do? Whatever. But it's like kind of, like I say, I saw something the other day said there is no coincidence. That was God. Whatever. But things kind of happen. Or you see a commercial on TV. You say, you know what? That's kind of the thing I was thinking about the other day. Just happened to come up, or you hear it on the radio, whatever. I don't know. But it's like God is kind of guiding you and speaking to you, in many ways. Maybe He spoke to this gentleman too. It's like, okay, yeah, you've done all you can do, and the gentleman didn't know where to turn, maybe, this nobleman didn't know where to turn, but maybe God spoke to him, and say, okay, yeah, and maybe someone, maybe, there was a person in the community say, hey, you need to find that gentleman Jesus, it's like, yeah, you know what, I heard about him, yeah, and he heard he was in Galilee. And so he, traveled there. So, there probably was some, what's called divine intervention or whatever, probably was some divine intervention in him seeking Jesus. Because they knew God, right? I mean, God. I mean, the word has been around for years, and they knew that the Messiah was coming. They just didn't know when and didn't know exactly who he was, right? There's probably, we talked about this probably before. There's probably several people claiming to be the Messiah. Just like you probably run into some people right now that's claiming to be the second coming of Jesus right now. It's probably you go out there and not find one for you get across the county line, probably. But 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 he knew from his experience and from what he heard to say, okay, now this is our Savior here, and so he probably couldn't wait for him to get close, you know. And then he found out he heard he was in Galilee. He's like, hey, that's close enough. I can walk there. So he decided to do it. Yes, sir.
I don't know the background on the nobleman,
Yeah,
but
yeah, me either. Yeah.
I'm gonna look it up now since you're saying this. I wonder, it makes you, huh?
I said, said no.
Oh, gotcha. But I still don't know the background.
Yeah, yeah.
All I'm saying is like with the lady at the well. Uh, what type of encounter did this guy have? Because for somebody to walk 25 miles,
Yeah, yeah.
I know he talked about faith and all, but it still had to be some type of encounter with somebody close to him, or something that he experienced for him to make that travel, right? That journey. So I just wonder his story, if it's in it. 'Cause it is, I think it's a little deeper
Yeah,
meaning.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so too. I think so too.
Because that, like with the lady at the well, she went back in town
Yeah.
and shared.
Right.
So why did they believe? Is it just because they heard of the Messiah? So I don't know, that's something to look into. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was gonna throw that out there. You know, I read somewhere that at this time in the Roman Empire, if you took a letter and sent it from one place to another, it took 6 weeks for that letter to get there. So, it's not like it is now. So there's, gossip or rumors or ongoing going on in one part of the Roman Empire. Unless you was just in the right place or the right person came up to you and told you what they heard, you could be very well ignorant of what's going on in another place.
Hmm.
So I think what you're saying is 100% true. For him to have somebody to tell him of Jesus and the miracles that he had performed, that wasn't no chance in encounter.
Yeah, yeah. And you can imagine, like I said, now it's just I got a crazy imagination, I guess. But there were people claiming to be the Messiah. They probably were performing little magic tricks. And folks are like, oh yeah, that's Messiah. You see that? You see that? He took that rock and it had it in his hand and it disappeared. Whatever. Like a little magic trick. And people, I'm sure, were searching for the Messiah. They come in to see this so-called Messiah, and they go to see him, and he doing magic tricks and hiding rocks or whatever. And it's like, so you had to. I would think they probably ran up on a lot of fake. Fake, we got a fake news and all today, but they had to run up on a lot of fake messiahs, people claiming to be. You know, there was a movie out. I can't think of the name of it now, but this guy was kind of a hustler kind of guy all his life, and what was the name of that movie? The guy's from Atlanta. Uh, he's one of actor, one of kind of newer actors. Anyway, he started, uh, you know, he started acting like he was Jesus as a hustle because he saw that people were giving Jesus things and all that. So and I want to say he had a cousin or a brother that was one of the disciples. I mean, this is a made up thing. It's supposed to be like a comedy kind of thing, parody. And then by the end, he actually gets uh, uh, some divine inspiration by the end of the movie. But he starts off, he's going around telling people he's Jesus and speaking and stuff, and so that people would donate money and all this, and that's his hustle or whatever. Because it ain't like you had TV and internet. Nobody know what he looked like unless you saw him. So if he's standing there saying that's who he is, I mean, if it's, especially if he does a little magic trick or something, the people wanted to believe who he was. A lot of, they say like a hypnotist. I've never been hypnotized. I never really challenged it that I could or couldn't, but they'll say some people just can't be hypnotized because they don't want to be. Like their mind is like, oh, I'm not, I'm not going to be hypnotized. It doesn't allow them to do it. So, but some people do, or are more susceptible to it. So, you know, so people can believe something. It's like a scammer call you, tell you, you give me $5, I give you $1,000,005 back. You want to believe that, so you go ahead and give them $5. Me, I'd be like, look, it ain't but $5, but I ain't gonna give you my $5. But listen, I think I will, but I'll probably fall victim to it too. But sometimes you want to believe stuff, and so you can imagine this nobleman probably experienced the same thing. That there's probably were miracle healers out there who said, "Oh, I can heal your son." You
Remember
know,
back when,
and they probably said they were
before
gonna heal him,
Pharaoh?
and didn't happen. Go ahead.
Yeah, remember when they went back before Pharaoh and they made the snake turn into a snake?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And then Pharaoh had his wise man, and he supposedly did the same
yeah,
miracles
yeah, yeah.
until he started making these plays happen. They couldn't do
Yeah.
obviously they couldn't do anything about these plays. So he's
Exactly.
like, yeah, I got wise, I got magic men too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
There
yeah.
was the lady that Paul them went to see that was supposedly the healer lady that was doing the miracles in
Mm-hmm.
town,
Mm-hmm.
and they was charging money for people to go see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you had them out there, So you can imagine this nobleman, having to seek out it, and there's no telling who else he went to go see already, claiming to be the Messiah. So, but he had to have some kind of faith. Like I said, surely there's some doubts in your mind that, okay, I'm gonna walk all the way over here. I mean, what if Jesus had left? He heard, so it probably took some time for him to hear that Jesus was in Galilee, right? So well, by the time it ain't like you can call and say, hey, I'm on my way, y'all hold up over there now, wait on me.
But man, I would say his social standing with
Yeah,
the nobleman.
yeah, yeah,
I don't think it took long for it to get around to him.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. That's true. Somebody probably knew he had a sick son. Probably say, hey, Jesus in Galilee. True,
So
true,
people
true.
probably all over.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm going a mile this way. I run into somebody else who's going a mile that way, and but it probably
yeah,
it still take a little time, but
yeah,
it probably was pretty fast for him.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
By the time
yeah.
it got around about Jesus.
Right, right, right. But what if Jesus had left? What if Jesus had somewhere else to go? He had somebody else to go see. I mean, in our human mind thinking, what if I get over there and they're not there no more?
I believe Jesus set himself up.
Yeah, yeah. Now I know Jesus knew it. Now Jesus knew he was coming. Jesus was gonna be there. But in your mind, or in the nobleman's mind, did he know Jesus knew it, that he was coming? You know? So in his mind, he might have said, he may be gone by the time I get there tomorrow, or late tonight or whatever.
Like with his friend, he knew he was dead.
Yeah, yeah, Lazarus.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
So I'm gonna wait until he died.
yeah, yeah,
Just so I can show them,
yeah, yeah,
the
exactly.
power
Yeah,
of God.
yeah,
So
yeah. So Jesus knew.
he
So
set
Jesus
himself
knew.
up for
So,
prove a point.
and he says right here in verse 48, um, um, we're in John 4, we're reading 46 through 54. We read that on Wednesday. So Jesus said to him, unless you people see signs and wonders, you simply will not believe. So Jesus, knew he had to, perform some miracles, in order. And I think some of that is, just skepticism that people have. But some of that is you had a lot of people, fake people out there claiming to be something that they weren't. Um, um, and of course, when he came to him, Jesus told him, go, your son lives. And then when he talked to some of his people and they told him when his son got better, it's right at the same time that Jesus said, go, your son lives. So, but to have that confidence and have that faith, in that critical moment, how many of us would have had that kind of faith and that kind of confidence? And then how many of us uh, Sister Vivian has comment, but how many of us would have acted on it the way he did? Say, "Hey, I'm gone. I'm walking 25 miles." How many of us would walk to Americas? And you still got to walk back too now. Exactly. There's a doctor in America right now. You're like, man, I ain't finna drive all the way to Americas, right? Like, I got a doctor right here. I ain't gonna see the eye doctor up there. There's an eye doctor right there. I mean, really. So, oh, hey, he real good. They real good up there. That's where you need to go. Man, I ain't finna drive all the way up there, right? This gentleman, of course, for your kids, you do a lot. Cause Zach had some tire problems yesterday. I hope you can get there and get you a tire. All right, call the tow truck. I hope they can find you. Tell them what color the trees are, so they can find you. I ain't finna go up there try to get you and get you to a place. You're grown now, son. But anyway, but so there had to be some skepticism, No, but this gentleman had the confidence. He had the faith, and he acted on it. Now, how many of us have faith, but we don't act on it? How many of us have asked God for something, asked, asked God for something, and and God has told us, yes, that's the move. I got you. And then what we do? Still sitting on our tail. Ain't took not one step towards that. 2 years later, you know what? I was gonna go do that about 2 years ago. I ain't do it. How many of us have done that? With our faith and with our confidence, and then we still didn't move. But this gentleman showed great faith. So in a crisis situation, as Ariel said, yeah, you still think about things. It's still on your mind. There's some things on my mind right now, that, oh yeah, I gotta, make sure I take care of or whatever. Yeah, it's not necessarily worrying about it. Thinking about it's not necessarily worrying about it. You know, um, um, there's a difference. You can ask God for something and you can know He's going to come through, but just because you're still thinking about it doesn't mean that you don't think God's going to do it. It's not that you're worrying about it. It's still on your mind. You're still thinking about it. Yes, sir.
Okay, now I had this thought last week. It just came back to me where we was at when we stopped.
Yeah.
I was reading somewhere and the guy said the challenge in Christianity is that God. People say, well, God said He wouldn't tempt you. Why is all this temptation? This, and that. The challenge with worrying, just like with all the other things we struggle with, isn't that God hasn't equipped you, He has prepared a path for you to walk on, right? But that each day when we get up, okay, let's say you have something troubling it weighing on you, you pray about it. The challenge for you isn't to go to God and give it to God and tell Him about what's troubling. The challenge is when you get up tomorrow and something spurs that thing back to your mind, are you gonna pick it back up? The whole plan of the evil one is to get you out of the mindset that every day you got to choose not to pick it back up. Because you ain't gonna stop knowing about the problem. If you know that, hey, I'm $75 short on my car note, you know you $75 short. But tomorrow when you get up and the thought comes in mind, I got 4 days to pay my car note. If that becomes the consuming thought of your day, you pick it back up.
Right. Good. That's a good point. So let's say you got the $75 short on your car note. And you got, say, 4 days, I was say.
Yeah.
All right. So now, do you just sit down? Do you say, well, God's gonna make sure I get the $75 so I can just sit here and watch a little TV and doorbell gonna ring? I'm gonna say, who is it? I'm gonna say, who is it? I'm gonna say 75. Who? 75. Gonna be knocking on your door? No, you still gotta do some action, right? Now God's probably gonna lead you to somewhere, to something, you know, but you gotta make some effort. You gotta make some effort. So so you gotta move. You gotta move. 75 ain't gonna just drop in your lap. You gotta do some things, but having confidence that God's going to provide, He's going to lead you in that direction. If you're seeking what you need to be seeking, He will do that. Yes, sir.
I think the $75 will knock at your door.
It might. It might.
But the fact is, it's not gonna knock in the sense that you hear it.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, somebody might show up and say, okay, I need some help. And you help them, and then they'll give you that in return. Or somebody might call and say, you know, I got this job.
hmm
So it's how you think about it. But like you say, God is gonna always provide.
Exactly. Exactly.
But a
Yeah.
lot of times we get caught up in how it's provided.
See, Johnny, you don't need no car.
Mhm.
You can foot it.
Ezra?
I'm just man. I ain't gonna walk unless I have to.
Hey, I wonder where you get that car from. They don't call 75.
He said 75 short.
Sure, sure. Okay. And the other 600, 700.
You gotta listen to all the words. He said 75 short.
That's all right. That's all right. But yeah, you need to act on it to we're reading the text here. You know, it's like we're afraid sometimes to confirm our faith. You know, we're afraid to show that we have that confidence that things are going to work out. You know, when I think we talked about this once or twice before. When things happen, you know, do you lose your head about you, or can you remain calm? You know, we were talking yesterday, and my sister was down, and one of her grandkids, they were playing with that fan that we had on the deck, and so we're like, don't play with that fan, gonna stick your finger in there, get it cut off like that, and and then so, so my sister, that grandmama, that's my sister, she was like, yeah, like your uncle over there, because I cut my tip of my finger off, slammed it in the door when I was little, so of course they had to come over and look at my finger and all that, but she was saying, um, um, our parents were gone when I did it, and she was the oldest that was at the house. And so, but here I am with a finger cut and blood everywhere, and running the house. And she like, I didn't know what to do, She, I guess she knocking on 70 now, I guess. They're knocking on 60 or something. She was early 60s, mid 60s. So she was like, I remember that day, I didn't know what to do. I just took it away. I started running water on it, and cleaned it off, you know. And our parents went home, and I guess they may have been able to drive, but even so, we probably didn't have a car at the house for them to drive anyway. So they had to wait for parents to get home or call somebody or whatever. You didn't have cell phones. But but you had to act, had to be calm in that situation. So when you're, we talked about like when you're at work or something and something happens, and do you lose your head about it? Do you get all upset? Or are you calm? Are you confident that, hey, it's all gonna work out, it's gonna be okay? Yeah, this new boss is coming in, and this may not be the boss that we wanted or whatever. But hey, it's gonna be okay. Our job's gonna be fine. We're gonna be able to sustain, this new boss or whatever. Yeah, we may have to work a little harder than we've been working. Okay, so we can't take them 2 hour lunch breaks no more. I can survive on an hour lunch break. You know, but or do you get worried about it and be like, they're gonna make us, get on to us for coming in 5 minutes late, whatever. If you're worried about it, and but you have to show and confirm your faith, because if you don't, I mean, like I said, how do you think you're gonna lead somebody somewhere when you don't look like that's the place you need to be yourself? And so what I mean by that is, if you're worried and all frazzled about things, why would someone want to follow you to this place right here? Because what you have is not helping you. Doesn't seem to be helping you. So, so, so we need to show our faith. We need to confirm our faith in everything that we do, and and so that when people see us, when people talk to us, when people experience us, they're truly experiencing, um, you know, a Christian that has a very strong faith and confidence in their God. All right? Yes.
Let me throw this out here.
See, I was in there right there, James. That was my last statement. So blame him.
You look at 1 Peter 5:8. It says,
Yes.
therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God,
Mm-hmm.
that he may exalt you at the proper time. casting all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Then it says, be of sober spirit, be on alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. But resist him firm in your faith, knowing that the same experience and suffering are becoming accomplished by your brethren who are in the world.
Hmm. Exactly. 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 You're not the only one that's going through something. And it's not the only time you're gonna go through something. Everybody is. Everybody is. And just know, which we read was it First Corinthians we read on Wednesday? That he'll never give you more than what you can handle. What he knows that you're able to handle. So he'll never forsake us. So all right, that's all we have today. Anyone have any questions, comments, criticisms? Y'all gonna talk about me? All right.